Welcome, everybody. My name is Caleb Nelson. I'm co-founder to Sifted and Chief Growth Officer. I'm joined by Kevin Miller today. Kevin, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Kevin Miller. I am Sifted's VP of Data Insights, which is a fancy way of saying the data science and analytics groups that power a lot of the tools that we have inside of our software. But I'm super excited about this new tool that we've developed and ready to show you guys what it can do.
Yeah, we are. Kevin's not going to mention this, but we are extremely lucky to have Kevin at Sifted. His insights and ability to be able to go through and identify different valuable aspects of the data is really at the core what makes Sifted Sifted. So, and it's really the talent behind it that's put into some of these new products. This new update that we have in time and transit, I think, is actually really cool. And I can't wait to showcase how it's different than what you would see out there in the marketplace. But kind of jumping into it here, and there's a few things, just housekeeping items before we launch into everything else. I sent in the chat window two links. One is to book a personalized demo if you want to see the time and transit in person and be walked through what that looks like with a little bit more personalization. Click on that link, schedule a time with one of our team members. We'd be happy to walk through it with you. The next link is a subscription to our newsletter. Our newsletter is phenomenal. Our marketing team doesn't get enough credit for the amount of work they put into doing, these kinds of events and getting the word out there. And that newsletter is a perfect way to stay up to date. I mean, Sifted's releasing new products all the time. Kevin, I've lost track as far as how many new products we've released in the last 12 months, but
But
it's
yeah,
up.
it's up there, and it's not just new products; it's improving existing products. It's tying more things together to provide more valuable insights back to our customers to make sure that they're making the best decisions possible for their businesses.
Yeah, and with so much changing in the industry too, outside of just the sheer amount of speed at which Sifted is growing and developing and adapting, the industry itself is changing so rapidly that newsletter is a great kind of condensed, boiled down version of what's the information you need to know. Kind of surfaces it right to your inbox. It's called Unboxed. Click on that. It's in the chat window. I encourage everybody to subscribe to that. It's a great way to be able to stay in touch. The other piece of housekeeping is if you have a question, we want to hear it. This is best when it is open and we can participate back and forth. So if you have a question, drop it in the chat window. Don't be afraid to ask. I think we work best when we work in kind of an informal way. So we're not going to wait for questions at the very end. Drop them as you see them, and we'll address it as you go through. And keep in mind, if you have that question, probably somebody else on the call probably does too, and you'd be doing them a favor by asking it. So again, drop that in the chat window. We'll address them as they come through, and I'll keep an eye on that. But to keep in mind, along with the conversation of so much is changing in the industry, there has been a substantial amount of changes in the last little bit. FedEx and UPS have both released their demand charges or peak season surcharge kind of outline or guidance for this year, as well as preliminary and for some of the carriers, detailed information on the general rate increase, which is taking place next year. UPS has avoided a strike situation just about a month and a half ago. And that cost them about $30 billion to make that Teamster agreement solid and the strike to go away. Not to mention, Amazon potentially entering the space to compete against FedEx and UPS, which I think is a very interesting play. All of this kind of upheaval and change and new competitive landscape with Amazon entering adds the validity that clients that are ordering product from your website expect it to be delivered on time and want that expectation really met, which means if you're partnered with FedEx or UPS and using their services right now, on-time delivery percentage is more important now than I think it ever has been. especially now that volumes have leveled out, right? The carriers kind of had some excuses when they were being flooded with freight. There were labor issues and labor shortages. On-time delivery percentage kind of went out the window, but now it's becoming more of a shipper's market. That volume is normalized, and therefore the carriers should be performing at acceptable levels today. And our time in transit dashboard is going to give you pure visibility into their on-time performance, and then some. And I'm excited to kind of show the ends and then some portion of this. Again, to keep in mind, we have some people on the call that have never heard of Sifted or are not a Sifted client. What we do at Sifted is really kind of boiled down to these three things. We help with speed and efficiency. We help with cost mitigation. Yes, cost savings is a part of that. And we help to ensure that your contract is best in the industry. We do that through data. We look at your parcel data and we look for ways in which you can improve, whether it's through insights and alerts, decision support, carrier management, or just through business automation. There is a substantial amount that Sifted does to make sure that you stay on top of your parcel needs and really make sure that next year you're not in a survival mode, you're in a thriving mode, especially with gen rate increase that is heavy for everybody. The one area that we're going to focus on today is that time in transit, but you can see all the different areas in which we provide services on and actually do a phenomenal job with. Okay, we'll dive into what time in transit is, and I'll turn it over to Kevin at that point. But from a high level, I think this is carrier on-time delivery percentage on steroids. I think that's a good way to think of it. This is, the carrier will come out with their on-time delivery percentage, which is different than if you were to actually track it. Those two numbers are very different. Kevin, I'm curious, and I'll turn it over to you in just a sec. But why is that number different? Why can the carrier come out with a different number than what if you actually were to track it?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, because the carriers are motivated by, there's a different motivation behind it, right? Back in the day, when a lot of the audit that people would use on carrier data, it was if it wasn't on time, the carrier would have to refund some of the money or all of the money of that particular shipment. So the way that they would track on-time percentage is really dependent on, were there exceptions? Was there a weather delay? Was there some other extenuating circumstances that caused that package to be delayed in the transit? But from a shipper's perspective, your customer doesn't care if there, is a weather delay or something like that. They ordered it. They might have, they paid for the 2-day shipping, or maybe you offer 2-day shipping, and it got there in 3 days. That's what we would consider real on-time percentage, which is always lower than what the carriers do, because the carriers want to make sure that, hey, we're doing great. There's all these other things that happened that caused your package to be delayed, but we're just going to count those as exceptions, and we're going to show you this percentage excluding those. But as a shipper, your customers are impacted by the amount of time that it takes for that package to be delivered to them. So we track when was the package sent and picked up by the carrier to when was it delivered on the front door, regardless of what happened in between. There are a lot of different things that could happen in between, but ultimately it's about client experience for your customers and when they get their packages. So that's why we track it a little bit differently than the carriers. It's because we want to know what the real transit time is, not this. I call it a little bit of a fudged number, but really it's excluding all the exceptions. Like I just want to know, how long it actually took.
Yeah, I think having the carrier provide their own on-time delivery percentage and trusting it is kind of like the fox in the hen house, and so to speak. And I also think that most clients, to your point, Kevin, either don't care or don't know that there's a storm that delayed it and it wasn't the carrier's fault, or in many cases it was the carrier's fault. Or what we saw about a year and a half ago with FedEx, where they had major labor issues and they were rerouting 600,000 packages a day to other facilities, even though it wasn't the right facilities, just because they had enough employees at those facilities to manage it. So
Yeah.
getting an accurate on-time delivery percentage, I think, is extremely important. Sifted does a really, really good job at taking it to the next level from a data perspective. So yes, there are on-time delivery performance metrics that are out there in the industry. That is a common thing. If you go to an auditor, they're going to track for late shipments to file for refunds, and then they're going to come back and say FedEx is 94% or 92% or 81% on time. What does Sifted do that's different than that? And it is really, we take it to that next level. I think it's really important on that second bullet point. We are going to compare your transit time with your carriers across others that are in your industry, which I think is really, really cool. That is that next level of access that Sifted has of using its scope of data to provide relevant and valuable information. Okay, going into let's dive in. I'll stop sharing my screen from here. I'm going to have Kevin share his screen and let's spend the rest of the time going through this. If anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to pause.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into this. I'm going to just share my window here, and we'll go from there. Okay, so to get to the time and transit dashboard, you'll just come up here into the software, go over to logistics intelligence, and then it's now a new dropdown within that particular part of the platform. I'm using one of our demo accounts, Parker's Bookshop. As you can see, the industry data isn't populated, and that's because we don't have an industry for this particular demo. And I wanted to show that on purpose. So if you're a starter client, we have several different tiers of packages within Sifted. If you're a starter client, you won't get the industry data. But as an advanced or a pro client, you will get the industry data. So how we get the industry for your business is we actually have a list from, it's really identified by the government when you sign up for your UIN. They provide an industry. It's called an NAICS code, and we grab that code and we kind of group them into there's several different levels. We try to keep it a little bit higher so that you get enough data to make a valuable insight out of it. So if you want to come over here to the filters, you can actually, if you don't have an industry or if you feel like your industry is miscategorized by that code that we get from the government, really, you can come in here and you can pick whatever industry you feel that is more in line with your work. So I'm going to use retail because I know a lot of us are e-commerce shippers, shipping packages off our website. I'll hit apply, and then you'll start to see some of this data come through. So what's really cool about the time in transit dashboard is this is our, one of the first dashboards that we're actually able to share industry data with our customers. When you get into pricing and things like that, we aren't allowed to share that information just due to some privacy things, but transit data is not one of those protected classes of data. So we are able to share with you guys, how am I doing against my competitors? How am I doing in my industry, which is amazing. So you can see here that we have it broken down by your overall time in transit, what your FedEx time in transit looks like, and what your UPS transit looks like. But not only that, you can see off to the right, how do I compare with the rest of my retail clients with FedEx? So I can see that I'm a little bit worse than some of my competitors inside of FedEx, and we'll go ahead and dive into that a little bit later. This is a great opportunity too for you to work with your carrier rep as an ally to figure out, is there something that I'm doing that's making it inefficient for you to get my packages out there on time? We always encourage people to use this data to go back to your carrier reps and find out a solution. They don't want this to happen where you're getting a higher transit time. They want to work with you and make sure that your experience is good too. So it's a great opportunity to strengthen that relationship too.
One other thing to add to that, Kevin, I think is so interesting is when we talk to shippers every day,
Yeah.
talking about, hey, I'm struggling to, find the right kind of data to have those conversations with FedEx or UPS,
Yeah.
justify what I'm asking for. So if you're a client and you're going through, a possible rate negotiation with FedEx or with UPS, not only is it a way for you to be able to say, okay, FedEx, UPS, how can I be a better fit to your network? And here's the on-time delivery percentage here. How can I boost that up? What can I do? But it's also the narrative that you can approach with the carrier to indicate, hey, look, carrier, you are not doing your job properly in order for me to be able to properly service my clients. And in order to be able to maintain a good business relationship with you, I'm looking for extra discount percentages in these key areas to combat your on-time delivery performance, which is poor for my industry. It's the idea of having solid conversations with your carrier rep that is moving away from the emotion and more into data, into logic. The
Yes.
idea of emotion being like, give me what I want, or I'm going to pull my business and give it to somebody else. That's an emotional response that does not get you nearly as far as, hey, carrier, here's the data. This is where we're lacking. I want to work together to help, but I need for you to do X, Y, and Z. So just to throw that out there, I think it's a great area to get some narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's vital to be armed with the right data to back up what you're seeing and what you're feeling within your own data, just to remove that emotional response. We've noticed that conversations with the carriers are very productive when you have data to back up your claims. Um, One of the other great tools about this is we initially load only the last 30 days of data in the time and transit tool, just to make sure that you're getting like a most recent impact. But if I want to see what's going on, let's say year to date, you can go ahead and change that and apply that filter so that I can look at the year holistically, right? So this will come into play a little bit further down, you'll see. But now I can see, okay, this is my transit over the last year for this year. Let's dive into it. There's a couple of different ways we can dive into it. You can look at it by service level. We know that, 3-day, it should be around 3 days, but I can see here that it's actually around 4.4 days. So why is it 1 day higher if I'm paying the premium price for a 3-day service? I would want to know why it's taking 4 days. Which tracking numbers are taking 4 days? And is there a break in the network somewhere that I need to work with my carrier on? You can also see this not only by service level, but you can see it by package level, which means that this is how many days in transit it is, and then how many packages fit within each one of those. So I can look down into 6 days, into 5 days, and see that, hey, it's 91% on time. I deliver a lot of my packages this way. But as you go through, you can even filter down by the service and see, okay, how many of my packages are hitting that thing. So, before we saw that 3-day was kind of that problem child. If I go ahead and hit apply on my 3-day, I can see that, there's a lot of different, I've got 2 packages. So that's probably why it's being a little wonky on that. But it's a great way just to kind of dive in and get a better picture of what's going on with your data. So,
I
we
think
know that, looking at it by service level, looking at it by transit days is important, but there's a lot of other aspects too. Uh, we've noticed that companies are either focused on time percentage or they're focused on late percentage. And you'd think, it's just the inverse, but certain businesses want to look at very specific pieces of that. So we've included both just to make sure that people, if they want to see it by on time or they want to see it by late percentage, you just click and it will change it. It's the inverse of one another. But again, you get to see where you stand versus where the rest of the industry stands. This is really important too, because let's say you're just a FedEx shipper and you're wondering, would UPS be better at getting my packages out to my customers on time? You can have that data in your arsenal. So it's a great way to see, okay, what if I did make a shift with my carrier? You can start to see what we're seeing in the data that we get and what percentage on time or late those packages are. Then again, you can see it trended over time. You can see it with that industry graph too, because if you see these dips, you know, that I'm seeing right here, is it an industry dip or is it just me? And in this particular case, it's just me. So I would want to go back and talk with my carrier if I ever saw this dip and say, hey, what's going on? Am I packaging things differently? Like let's work on this to make sure we can get this trajectory to go the right way so that my on-time percentage is there. Again, you can see this by lots of different ways. You can see it by on-time percentage. You can look at it from a package perspective, see how many late packages you've got over time, what my transit days look like over time. So I can see here that the carriers are getting better over time right now. We'll probably see this spike back up during peak season and demand season, but it's just a great tool for you to see over time, how are things going? And then if you see any anomalies, you can drill down into it. So other things too that we've always given our clients back with data is they like to see it by state. You know, if I'm shipping something to Wyoming, what is my average zone? Wyoming is, you know, not a very populated state. So let's go down to Washington or down to Texas, where I see a lot of my packages are going. It's a zone 7. Does that mean that my on-time percentage is worse there, or is it better? What can I do to fix that? And you can see this by state, or we do it by 3-digit zip, which is generally how a lot of these zones will work. So you can see we've got some Canadian zones here, we've got the US zones, and a lot of these different metrics. But I know we've got a lot of data junkies out there, like myself. Sometimes I just want to dig down into it a little bit more. So what we've done is we've included this export, but when you click the export button, there are several different ways you can view this data. The first one is you'll see it just as the table is over here. If you've selected the 3-digit zip, it will show you the 3-digit zip. If you've selected state, it will show you the state with the columns that we've included. If you want the underlying data, then it will export a CSV for you. And it will give you all of the data with the tracking numbers and all of the underlying data that we use for it. And then you can create pivot tables. You can import it into your visualization software. If you've got an analytics team, you can use that data however you want and however you're most comfortable. Or, and this is my personal preference, you know, that's one of the great things that we're trying to do is we're trying to create the flexibility that whatever you're most comfortable with, you still have that flexibility to pull that data. So I like to go to the PLD redirect, and the package level details is another section of our software. I'll just bring it up over here. It can take a minute to load. I don't want to keep you guys just waiting for this to load, but it comes up with all of that data that you would see in the CSV export, right? But when I'm here, I can actually start filtering down a little bit more. If there are certain columns I don't need to see, well, I can delete them. I don't, you know, I'm just looking for specific things. I'm not worried about the company or any of these address lines. I can remove those and hit apply, and it would upload the export format for me. I can even add additional filters. There's a lot of extra flexibility by going into the package level details that can get you the specific data set you need to make the right choices or to send back to your carrier. So it's something that's really cool that we're really excited about this tool because it provides an additional layer of visibility back to you guys to make sure that A, the carriers are performing the way I expect them to, and B, if they're not, or what can I do about it? And then C, is there inefficiency in my own network that I can focus on? And you can drill down, drill through. There are a lot of different filter options here that you can drill down through. I'll just kind of leave this up so that you guys can read through it on your own. But a lot of different ways to kind of help give you guys more time back into solving the problem instead of trying to identify the problem within your own transit time.
That's a great explanation on that. I think that's why I'm so excited. I hope everybody can see that. That's why we're so excited at Sifted about this new release. I think it's killer to be able to make those better informed decisions. I'm going to pause for just a minute. If anybody has any questions, drop it in the chat window. We'd be happy to go over it and discuss it. While we're waiting for that, I think one of the biggest takeaways, Kevin, that I have as you're going through that, if I'm a shipper, I'm looking for, on the service level side, if I'm going to make a mistake selecting a particular service level, or if I'm noticing a service level is taking longer to get there, I can just omit that, change the service level moving forward to a more effective service level.
Yeah.
Based upon, okay, all of my 3-day now need to go ground because they're getting there within about that time frame anyways. There's
Yeah.
no sense of me paying 3-day select service. And that allows for me to be able to say, okay, I need to make better decisions on that, as well as shifting volume. If I'm dual sourced between FedEx and UPS, and I notice the carrier is not performing to my level of expectation or to their own expectation, shifting that volume around and having justification to do so, I think
Yeah.
is very.
Yeah. And especially as we see additional carriers come into the market, like the Amazons of the world, USPS has created a ground advantage program that is amazing too. It's a great option for a lot of people. So yes, there's a lot of different options that we can have there to just drill down and get that data for you, you know. But looks like we've got a couple of questions. The first one is, if I find that one carrier is consistently late, how would you recommend I move forward? So that's a great question, honestly, because I think that in today's world where putting all of your eggs in one basket can get you better discounts, it gets you better conversations with that particular carrier. But let's say we are seeing something like this where my FedEx shipping is taking significantly longer than the rest of the FedEx shippers, but it's taking 3 days longer than my UPS accounts. What would I do? The first thing I would do is I would pull some data on what's going on around this 5 days. So is it a particular area? Is it a state that's causing the delays? Is there something that I'm doing with my service mix? So you can kind of just click around here. I would probably start first with service level. You can even come over here into the filters and just filter by FedEx so that I'm only seeing my FedEx data, and I can just start to drill down on what's going on here. So I can see that it's taking 5 days, and it looks like it's mostly my ground shipments, home delivery and ground. So where is it a particular zip code that's taking a little bit longer? I see that I have a lot of late packages in these particular zip codes. If I'm looking at it by state, I can see that, you know, my on-time percentage for Washington is 83%. I'd like that to be higher. I want to see it in the 90s. So is there something that I could be doing to help the carrier move that? And I would take this data back to my carrier rep and say, hey, I want like my customers are getting impacted because my packages are arriving late. How can we move forward with this? Because this is a frustration point for my customers, and that's a problem for me. I've noticed that it's all, you know, I've got Washington and Texas where I'm having a lot of these late packages. Let's work something out. Is there something you suggest? Is there some concessions you can make to make this more worth my time, not to have to shift over to UPS? But it gives you like more ammunition against the carrier to work on a solution that is a win-win, mostly for you and your clients. Sometimes it may not be as beneficial to the carrier, but it helps with your client experience, and they understand that. They understand it's a business thing. And that's where Caleb was saying, you remove the emotion from it, you show them the data, and they can't rebuke that. So they have to do something to work with you on that one. So that's what I would do if I'm noticing that something is consistently late. You can also use this graph just to make sure that, you know, if you're looking at the on-time percentage, that if it's ever just hanging out down here near that 75 mark or anything below 90% really, it would allow you to have that conversation to say, something's going on with you guys. I need to, either you got to fix it or I've got to figure something else out.
Yeah, what's interesting is the carriers themselves will say, oh, we're 98% on time.
Yeah.
So I think making sure that you know what your limit is, and my limit would be anything around that 90% on time or worse.
Yeah.
I've got a huge red flag, and I'm calling carrier. Next question came in: is it possible to dig into specific tracking numbers for late packages? So if you just wanted to isolate just the late packages,
Yeah.
you dive into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing you can do is you can look at how many late packages you're getting. this would help me identify, is there a certain time frame I want to look at? So for this particular example with FedEx, I would want to look kind of near the end of June into the beginning of July. As you come down here, you can just go to, it doesn't matter if you're at the state or the 3-digit zip. I would export and then go to the PLD redirect. And when I'm there, there's actually a column that shows you if it's late or on time. And it's called the tracking result column. Right over here, you'll see that it says it's either on time or it's late. You can filter down on that column to only show late packages. So I would say, hey, I only want to see my late packages. If you're looking at lost or damaged packages too, you could do that. You can hit apply. And now you have all of the tracking numbers that fit that particular criteria. So if you're looking at specific states, zip codes, a specific carrier, services, there's so many different ways to dissect this. But this is a great way to do that and use those filters. That's why I said I like going to the package level details section, because it gives me the flexibility to add additional filters, remove columns, or do whatever I need to, and then I can export that to a CSV for my own use.
Yeah, it's no wonder our name is Sifted, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That way to find it exactly how you need it. Um, I'm looking for the Q&A. If we have any additional questions, Kevin and I will be here for the next few minutes, and we'll hang out. If not, if you have if there's a number of you all that might drop in that time frame, I think really those two links that I sent in the chat window, click on those. If you want a personalized demo, we'll jump on the phone with you. We'll go through it. And if you want to have access to this time and transit dashboard, click on that link. The second link is for that newsletter. Again, the Unboxed is a phenomenal way to be able to address industry changes and Sifted changes. But if not, we really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you so much for jumping on. I'll keep my eye on this Q&A, and if you have questions, hang out. Kevin and I will be here for the next couple of minutes. We'll be happy to do so. Looks like we got nothing right now, but Kev, if you're okay, let's just hang out and see if anything else comes. If not, thank you everybody, for those of you who are dropping off. Be happy to address anything as it comes up.